The day my daughter-in-law threw me out of their house, something inside me shifted. She probably thought I would walk away broken, humiliated, and defeated, but instead I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. The pain cut deeper than I wanted to admit. But that smile, it wasn't for her. It was for me. Because at that very moment I knew something she didn't. I knew that life always finds a way to teach its lessons. And this time, I was going to be the one holding the chalk. I didn't argue with her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even defend myself. I simply picked up my coat, looked her in the eyes one last time, and walked out. That silence spoke louder than any words I could have shouted, because deep inside I had already made my decision. As I got into my car, I took a deep breath. I wasn't leaving in anger. I was leaving in clarity. Sometimes you don't need to fight the storm head on. You simply need to step aside and let the storm pass, while you quietly prepare for what comes next. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, stared at a name in my contacts, and pressed call. It rang only once before he picked up. His voice was sharp, professional, and to the point. "Is it time?" he asked. "It's time," I replied. "Make the arrangements. I want everything ready before the new year." He didn't ask questions. He knew me well enough to understand that once I made a decision, there was no turning back. As I drove away from that house, the same house I had helped them secure, the same house I had supported with my own money, my mind replayed every memory, every sacrifice I had made for my son, every compromise, every hour of work, every dollar spent, every silent prayer that he and his wife would have a better life than I did. And this was how they repaid me? By shutting the door in my face? But I wasn't going to waste my breath blaming them. Number. I was going to do something much better. I was going to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Days passed, weeks passed. They didn't call me. My son didn't reach out, and my daughter-in-law didn't apologize. To them, it was as if I had vanished. And maybe that's what they wanted. But what they didn't know was that while they were celebrating their holidays, smiling in their decorated living room, drinking hot chocolate under the Christmas lights, I was quietly building something behind the scenes, something that would change everything. When the new year finally came, I showed up at their door again. This time, I wasn't carrying gifts. I wasn't carrying food or decorations or anything to brighten their holiday. Number. This time, I carried only a folder that held the power to flip their perfect little world upside down. My daughter-in-law opened the door. The look on her face was priceless, surprise mixed with annoyance. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stepped inside, walked calmly to the dining table, and laid the folder on the polished wooden surface. Then I looked at her, straight in the eyes, and said, "Do you remember the day you told me to leave this house? The day you told me I wasn't welcome here?" She crossed her arms, her chin high, defiance all over her expression. "Yes, and I meant it," I nodded slowly. "Good, because today you're about to learn what those words truly cost you." My son walked into the room, confused. He glanced at the folder, then at me. "Dad, what's going on?" I looked at him with the kind of calm only years of patience can give. "What's going on," I said, "is that you're about to face the reality behind the roof over your head, the bills you pay, or rather, don't pay, and the life you think is yours." Their eyes widened. My son looked worried. My daughter-in-law rolled her eyes. "What are you talking about? This is our home. We pay for it." I let out a small chuckle. "Do you? Really?" I slid the folder toward them. "Go ahead. Open it. See for yourselves. Inside were copies of mortgage papers, bank transfers, and legal documents. Every signature, every payment, every lifeline that had kept this house standing, it all traced back to me. My son's face went pale as he flipped through the pages. My daughter-in-law tried to snatch them from him, scanning them quickly, her confidence fading with every second. This can't be right," she stammered. "Oh, but it is," I replied. "Every month you thought you were paying, every holiday you thought you could afford, every comfort you've been enjoying. It wasn't your doing. It was mine. I've been the one keeping this house alive. And the day you told me to leave, you spat in the face of the very person who made this life possible." The silence in that room was deafening. My son couldn't meet my eyes. My daughter-in-law's mouth opened and closed like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "You thought you were teaching me a lesson in pride, but the truth is, I was the one teaching you. And now, the real lesson begins." My son sat frozen, staring at the documents as if the pages were on fire. His hands trembled, his lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked at me, then at his wife, then back down at the proof in front of him. "Dad, I don't understand," he whispered. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I sighed. My heart ached. This was not the way I had hoped he would discover the truth. I had wanted him to realize it on his own, through gratitude, through appreciation. But life rarely gives us the endings we plan. "I didn't tell you," I said slowly, "because a parent's job is to give, not to take credit. When you were young, I worked 2 jobs so you could go to school. I never told you about the nights I went without dinner just so you could have enough. I never told you about the bills I paid silently behind the scenes so you wouldn't feel the weight of responsibility before you were ready. That's what parents do. We sacrifice quietly because we love." My son's eyes filled with tears, but my daughter-in-law let out a sharp laugh. "So what? You helped. Big deal. That doesn't give you the right to control our lives, to throw this in our faces like some kind of hero." Her words cut like knives, but I didn't flinch. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze steady. "Hero? Number. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who gave everything for his family, only to be told he wasn't welcome anymore. And that's fine. You don't have to thank me. But what you can't do is deny reality. The reality is simple. Without me, none of this would exist." She opened her mouth to argue again, but I raised my hand. "Don't. Just don't. Because I didn't come here today for your approval or your gratitude. I came here to deliver the lesson you earned the moment you told me to leave." The room felt heavy. My son wiped his eyes, his voice breaking. "Dad, please. Whatever this is, don't take it too far." I looked at him with all the love in the world, but also with the firmness of a father who had been pushed too far. "Son," I said softly, "sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we remember the most. And if I don't do this, you'll never learn." I stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the yard where I had once played with my grandchildren, where I had planted flowers with my own hands. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay strong. "You see," I continued, my back still to them, "the call I made the day she threw me out wasn't to a lawyer. It wasn't to a bank. It was to someone who owed me a favor, a very big favor. And as of this morning, every arrangement has been finalized. This house, this mortgage, this comfortable life you've been enjoying, it's no longer yours to claim." My daughter-in-law gasped. My son stumbled to his feet, his face pale. "What? What are you talking about?" I turned slowly, my eyes locking onto theirs. "I transferred ownership. Effective immediately, the house is under my name. Every payment, Every legal right. It belongs to me now. You wanted me gone? Fine. But you forgot one very important detail. You can't erase the foundation that was built with my hands. My son's voice cracked. Dad, you can't do this. Where will we go? What about the kids? I stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. I don't want to see you homeless, son. I don't want to see my grandchildren suffer. That's why I'm not throwing you into the street today. I'm giving you a choice. Their eyes widened. Even my daughter-in-law's smugness faltered as she realized the weight of my words. You have 3 months, I said firmly. 3 months to get your finances in order, to stand on your own 2 feet, and to finally take responsibility for the life you've been living. After that, this house will no longer be yours. Consider it training wheels. I carried you for too long. Now it's time to see if you can balance on your own. Silence fell again, but this time it was thick with tension. My son collapsed back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. My daughter-in-law's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, an argument, a loophole. But there was none. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. You wanted independence. You wanted me out of your life. Very well. But independence isn't free. It comes with responsibility. And today you begin to understand that. For a long moment, no one moved. The ticking of the clock on the wall was the only sound in the room. Then my son looked up, tears streaking his face. Dad, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. I should never have let her treat you that way. My heart ached, but I stayed strong. Apologies won't fix this, son. Only actions will. And if you truly want to make it right, then prove it. Work hard. Take care of your family without leaning on me. That's the only way you'll earn back what you've lost. My daughter-in-law finally spoke, her voice trembling. This isn't fair. You can't just— I cut her off, my tone sharp. Fair? Do you think it was fair when you humiliated me in my own family's home? Do you think it was fair when you slammed the door in my face after everything I had done? Life isn't about fairness, young lady. It's about respect. And respect is something you have to earn. Her face flushed red, and for once she had no clever comeback. I stood tall, my decision final. 3 months, I repeated. Use them wisely. Because when the time is up, the safety net disappears, and then you'll finally understand what it means to build a life from the ground up. With that, I picked up the folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The silence behind me told me everything I needed to know. As I stepped out into the crisp winter air, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not sorrow, but peace. Because for the first time, I knew they would either rise or fall. And either way, they would learn. And that was the only gift I had left to give. The first month was almost unbearable. For them, not for me. From the outside, I watched quietly. I didn't interfere, I didn't offer advice, I didn't lend a helping hand. I simply observed as the weight of reality slowly pressed down on their shoulders. At first, my daughter-in-law tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. She continued to host her little gatherings, posting pictures online of her perfect life, sipping wine with friends in a house that, technically, was no longer hers. But behind the smiles and carefully staged photos, cracks were forming. Bills piled up. Their savings, which they thought were steady, began to drain faster than water through a sieve. And for the first time, she realized that money doesn't stretch as far as she believed. My son. He worked long hours, coming home late at night, exhausted. I could see the bags forming under his eyes, the slump in his shoulders. He was trying, truly trying to hold everything together. But trying wasn't enough. I remember one evening, about 6 weeks in, I happened to pass by their house. Through the window, I saw them arguing. My son's voice was raised, something I had rarely heard before. "You think I don't notice?" he shouted. "You spend like nothing's changed, like money just falls from the sky." "Well, it doesn't. I'm killing myself at work, and it's still not enough," his wife fired back, her words like daggers. "Don't blame me. You're the one who let your father take control of everything. You should have stood up to him. This is your fault, not mine." Their children sat at the table, silent and confused, pretending to focus on their food while their parents tore into each other. My heart ached for them, but I stayed hidden in the shadows, watching. This was the painful part of the lesson. They needed to see what unchecked pride and disrespect could do to a family. The second month was even worse. The car they drove, an expensive one they never should have financed, was repossessed. I heard the tow truck in the night, dragging it away as my daughter-in-law stood on the porch, yelling at the driver, begging him to stop. My son stood behind her, silent, his face pale, his fists clenched at his sides. They started selling things. The fancy television, gone. The designer furniture, gone. Piece by piece, the illusion of their perfect life crumbled. And yet, despite all of this, my daughter-in-law's pride remained unshaken. She still carried herself as if she were untouchable, blaming everyone but herself. She blamed the economy, she blamed my son, and most of all, she blamed me. "Your father did this to us," she hissed one night when I happened to overhear her in the driveway. "He wanted to humiliate us. He wanted to destroy us, but she was wrong. I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted them to wake up." By the third month, the change finally began to show. My son looked different. He was still tired, yes, but there was a fire in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. He picked up extra shifts. He started budgeting, cutting corners, fixing what little he could with his own hands. And then something happened I'll never forget. It was a cold evening. I was at home when my doorbell rang. When I opened it, there he stood, my son. Not with his wife, not with the children, just him. His hands were rough, his clothes worn from work, his eyes heavy. "Dad," he said softly, almost like he was that little boy again, asking me for help with his homework. "Can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. We sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I had given him countless meals growing up. He looked at me for a long time before speaking. "I get it now," he whispered. His voice cracked, tears forming in his eyes. "I get why you did this. I never understood how much you sacrificed. I never realized how easy I had it until it was gone. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for letting her treat you that way. For not standing by you, I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. For the first time in months, I let my own tears fall. Son," I said quietly, "I didn't want to break you. I wanted to build you. And sometimes, the only way to build strength is through struggle." He nodded, wiping his face. "I know. And I want to fix it. I don't care about the house or the car or any of it. I just want to do right by my family, and by you. But I need to ask, when the 3 months are up, what happens to us?" I leaned back in my chair, my heart heavy but proud. "That depends entirely on you," I said. "If you've learned to stand on your own, then maybe, just maybe, I'll let you keep what you've built. But if you keep letting pride and disrespect guide your path, then you'll lose it all. The choice is yours." He nodded again, determination settling into his features. "Then I'll prove myself, Dad. I'll show you I can be the man you raised me to be." When he left that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But the real test was still to come. 3 months, 90 days of silence, struggle, and hidden battles. And then the day arrived. I remember sitting in my chair that morning, staring out the window as the winter sun crept over the horizon. The world outside looked calm, but inside my chest, my heart beat like a drum. This was it, the moment everything had been building toward. At exactly noon, I heard the knock at my door. Firm, heavy, almost defiant. I opened it, and there they were. My son stood tall, his shoulders squared, his expression steady. He looked like a man who had been through fire and come out hardened. But beside him, my daughter-in-law. Her face was sharp, her eyes blazing, her pride unbroken. "May we come in?" my son asked. I stepped aside. "Of course." They sat across from me at the table, the same table where I had spoken my ultimatum 3 months earlier. The air was thick with tension. My daughter-in-law wasted no time. She leaned forward, slamming her hand on the wood. "You've proven your point," she spat. "We've suffered, we've struggled, and it's all because of you." "Enough is enough. Give us back the house. Give us back our life. We deserve it." I studied her carefully, my hands folded in front of me. Her words dripped with venom, but beneath it I saw something else: fear. She was terrified of losing control, of losing the comfort she had taken for granted. Before I could answer, my son spoke. His voice was calm, measured, but powerful. "No," he said. She whipped her head toward him, stunned. "What do you mean, no?" He turned to me, his eyes steady. "Dad, I don't want the house. I don't want your money. I don't want any of it handed to me. I've spent these 3 months learning what it means to earn, to fight, to sacrifice. And I realized something. I don't want to live off what you built. I want to build my own." My chest tightened. For the first time, I truly saw the man I had raised. Not the boy who once leaned on me for everything, not the husband who let his wife speak over him, but a man, strong, determined, resolute. My daughter-in-law's face twisted with rage. "Are you insane? We have nothing without this house. Nothing." He shook his head. "No, we have each other. We have our children. And we have the chance to start fresh. I'd rather live in a tiny apartment we pay for ourselves than in a mansion that isn't truly ours." Her voice rose, shrill and desperate. "This is madness. Don't you see? He's manipulating you. He doesn't care about us. He wanted to watch us fail." I finally leaned forward, my voice steady but cold. "No, I wanted you to understand. I wanted you both to see that pride, entitlement, and disrespect will only lead to ruin. I don't need to manipulate anyone. The world itself delivers the harshest lessons. All I did was give you a glimpse of that reality." For a long, heavy silence, no one spoke. Then my son stood. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table in front of me. "What's this?" I asked. "Our new lease," he said. "It's not much, just a small place across town. But it's ours. We can afford it. And, Dad, I wanted you to see that we're ready to stand on our own. No more crutches, no more excuses." I unfolded the paper, my hands trembling slightly. The address, the monthly rent, the signatures, it was all there. Proof that he meant every word. My daughter-in-law was furious, her face flushed red. She jumped to her feet. "I won't live like this. I married into this family for stability, for security, and now you're telling me I have to give it all up?" My son's voice cut through her anger, firm and final. "Then maybe you married me for the wrong reasons." The room fell silent. Her eyes widened, stunned by his words. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. For the first time since I had known her, she was speechless. I rose slowly, looking at my son with pride swelling in my chest. "You've passed the test," I said softly. "Not because you asked for my wealth back, but because you refused it. That's what makes a man. That's what makes a leader." I walked to the cabinet, pulled out a sealed envelope, and placed it in his hand. He looked at me with confusion. "What's this?" he asked. "Something I set aside for this very moment," I said. "Open it when you're ready. But know this. What matters most isn't what's inside. It's the fact that you no longer need it." He stared at the envelope, then tucked it carefully into his jacket. He didn't open it, not then, not in front of his wife, not even in front of me, because he understood now that the real treasure wasn't paper or property. It was the strength he had gained through hardship. As they left my house, my daughter-in-law stormed ahead, her heels clacking angrily against the floor. But my son lingered at the door, turning back one last time. "Thank you, Dad," he said quietly, "for everything." And with that, he was gone. I stood in the silence of my home, tears brimming in my eyes, my heart full. The 3 hardest months of my life had ended, not with bitterness, not with defeat, but with the rebirth of the man I had always hoped my son would become. And that was worth every second. It had been 6 months since that day, 6 months since my son stood in my kitchen, looked me in the eye, and told me he no longer needed my wealth to define his worth. A lot had changed since then. Their new apartment wasn't large. It was a modest 2-bedroom on the far side of town, tucked above a small grocery store. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, and the neighborhood was far from glamorous. But it was theirs. They paid for it with their own hard work, and that made every square foot feel like a palace. I visited one evening. My son opened the door, smiling with a warmth I hadn't seen in years. His clothes were simple but clean. His hands were calloused, his posture firm. He looked happy. Not the fragile, forced happiness of someone living beyond his means, but the deep, steady joy of a man who knew his life was truly his own. "Dad," he said, embracing me tightly. "Come in." The apartment smelled of home-cooked food. Nothing fancy, just a hearty stew simmering on the stove. The children ran to me, their laughter filling the air. For the first time in so long, I saw them carefree, not shadowed by the weight of their parents' arguments. My daughter-in-law appeared from the kitchen. She looked different, too. Tired, yes, but softer somehow. Humbled. There was no arrogance in her eyes, no sharpness in her tone. She greeted me with a quiet, respectful nod. Dinner was simple, but it was shared with gratitude. As we ate, I listened to my son talk about the extra shifts he'd taken, the budgeting system he'd created, the small victories they had achieved together. Every word filled me with pride. He had become the man I always knew he could be. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. After the children were tucked into bed, my son walked over to the small drawer by the couch. He pulled it open, reached inside, and retrieved the envelope I had given him months ago. He sat across from me, holding it in his hands. For a long time, he said nothing, just stared at it. Finally, he spoke. "Dad, I never opened it." "I know," I said with a smile. "I could tell. But tonight," he continued, his voice steady, "I think I'm ready." He carefully tore it open, sliding out the folded papers inside. His eyes scanned the words, and I watched as his expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to something deeper. "Dad, this is the deed to the house we lost." "Yes," I said softly. "It's been yours all along. I never truly took it from you. What I took was your sense of entitlement. I needed you to see that a house means nothing if the foundation of your character is weak. But now you're strong enough to deserve it." Tears welled in his eyes. He set the papers down, shaking his head. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," I replied. "Just live in a way that honors it. Don't let the walls of that house become a prison of pride again. Fill it with humility, with gratitude, with love. That's the only way it will ever be a home." Across the room, my daughter-in-law had been listening silently. At last, she spoke, her voice quiet, trembling. I was wrong," she admitted. "About you. About everything. I thought strength meant control, luxury, status. But I see now. It means sacrifice. It means respect. I treated you poorly. I disrespected this family. And for that, I am sorry." Her words surprised me. But more than that, they touched me. Because for the first time, I heard sincerity in her voice. I nodded. Pride is a heavy chain, but once you let it go, life becomes lighter. Don't carry it again. The room was still. Then, slowly, my son reached over and took her hand. They shared a look, a real look, the kind that speaks of pain endured and lessons learned. And in that moment, I knew they would be all right. Weeks later, they moved back into the house. But it was different this time. There were no lavish parties, no unnecessary luxuries. The laughter that echoed through those halls wasn't forced, it was real. And every time I visited, I saw my grandchildren running through the rooms, their joy untainted by arrogance or conflict. As for me, I finally felt peace. The test had been hard, cruel even, but it had worked. My son had grown into a man of integrity. My daughter-in-law had found humility. And my family, broken for so long, was whole again. One evening, as the sun set behind the house, I sat on the porch with my son. We watched the children chase fireflies, their laughter floating through the warm air. "Dad," he said quietly, "you gave me the hardest 3 months of my life. But they were also the most important. You didn't just give me back a house, you gave me back myself. And for that, I'll never stop being grateful." I looked at him, pride swelling in my chest, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Son, that was all I ever wanted." And as the night settled in, I finally understood. Sometimes the greatest gift a father can give his child is not comfort, not wealth, not safety. Sometimes the greatest gift is the struggle that shapes them into who they were meant to be. The end.